Oh, there's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a review of a 1919 gay novel out of America. Bertram Cope's Year by Henry Blake Fuller. Like I say, published in 1919, it's one of the very first American novels about a, well, I'm not sure quite openly gay character, but with gay characters, and I thought it was excellent. I gave it 4 stars. I think I gave it 5 stars. And I'm going to tell you all the reasons why. Henry Blake Fuller is a forgotten American novelist today, but he died about 10 years after this was published. This was published when Henry Blake Fuller was 62 years of age. Because it's such a subtle novel, most of the reviewers that read it, they had no idea what it was about. It wasn't like there was an extreme homophobic reaction to the novel. People just kind of threw up their hands and said, yeah, it's well written, it's kind of funny in places and kind of interesting characters, but we don't really know what's going on here. Henry Blake Fuller was so disappointed or upset or out of sorts about the reaction to the novel that he actually withdrew it from circulation, and it wasn't published again until decades after his death. He had written several well-received novels before this. I think this was his last novel, but I'm not sure. But it was his novel that had the most overt homosexual themes and characters. The subtlety of the gay narrative actually beguiled me. And I want to say early in the review, so that those of you that object to this kind of queer narrative will keep watching my review and consider reading the book. It doesn't end tragically. There's a kind of a mild tragedy, but it doesn't end. The gay character doesn't get killed off in the end, which is something that happened a lot in gay literature and which many a modern reader of queer fiction objects to. I don't personally. I think that tragic ending, suicide, whatever, was a fairly accurate depiction of the fate that befell our queer ancestors. So I have no problem with it. I mean, it's sad, but it's not objectionable, and I don't quite get the young'uns criticizing it so much. I think that the queer experience, up until very recently, and for far too many people even today, is still a very sad and challenging existence, and I do not object to it being portrayed thusly. However, the gay men in this story live kind of in an open closet, especially the hero, Bertram Cope, and his lover, Arthur. They're not rubbing it in people's faces, but they are also not hiding the fact that they are a couple. And because the straight people in the story are so obtuse to the fact that they might be a gay couple, or are choosing to kind of fool themselves, it's possible to read the novel and not have a clue what's going on if if you don't know anything about homosexuality. And I found that to be, by the end of the novel, a fascinating read, and what struck me most of all was the fact that there was a lot of social dynamics between straight and gay people, between different generations of gay men, that subtly, and in this kind of open, closeted environment of the world of this novel, were explored in ways that I could relate to 100 years later. So it was a lot more fascinating than I expected it to be. The story is set in a small Illinois city modeled on Evanston, Illinois. Bertram Cope is a 24-year-old grad student who gets a job there teaching first-year English and finishing up his doctorate or whatever, his thesis. He's new in town, he's good-looking, he is charismatic, and there isn't a whole lot else to his character, but he charms the pants off people in the new town, literally or figuratively. It depends how much you read into the subtle things that transpire here. And we meet him at a house party at Medora's house, and Medora is in her mid-40s. Bertram Cope is in his mid-20s. And she takes him under her wing. She is the widow of an artist. She has a house full of nieces that all have eyes for Bertram. And she has a wit and a banter that is quite striking from the opening pages of the novel and kind of throws Bertram off his game because she's very confrontational, but it's just banter. And it's quite fun to read. There is a lot more to her character by the end of the novel, but I really enjoyed the way that she flusters Bertram, takes him under her wing, so he goes back to her house, and from that very first party, Bertram is introduced to Randolph, and Randolph is a 50-year-old closet queen. He's like an academic manqué, is that how you pronounce it? Never really connected to the university, but family connection to the board of supervisors or whatever it's called. Board of directors, what do they call it? The board of trustees for the university, and he's collects ephemera, and he's never married, and he has a series of short-lived relationships, we're not sure of what kind, with young male students at the university, takes them under his wing and tries to mentor them, and I don't know what else he tries to do because it's a very subtle novel, but he sets his sights on Bertram. I think that's all I need to tell you about the plot. There are some dramatic moments in this story, but mostly it's a very quiet story about the new hot young teacher in town and what people make of him. Then his boyfriend joins him 6 months later or something. And what do they make of him? And they're not out, but it's obvious to anybody reading it today that they are a couple. And they're a little bit touchy-feely, and nobody freaks out about it, but people just don't interpret it or choose not to voice what they think of it. There is one moment of violent homophobia at the end of the novel, which was shocking because of it just shattered but it's not tragic. Well, no, it's not, nobody dies, but his boyfriend Arthur is a bit femmy, and it's fascinating to read all that stuff because it's just understated. And one of the things that I found fascinating was that Randolph didn't even seem to be out to himself. He was jealous when Bertram's boyfriend came, and Medora was jealous, but they didn't ever seem to talk, or they didn't ever seem to realize what was going on inside themselves or between the two young lovers. And I don't know, I have quirky taste in literature, so listen carefully to what I'm saying, and it may not be your cup of tea, but it definitely was mine. And it's not an overt gay story, and there are other things going on, and some of them are comedic. Because Bertram follows kind of the code of chivalry, he accidentally finds himself dating one of Medora's nieces, and he didn't intend to do that, and that's kind of funny and well narrated and fun to read about, and he has to extricate him, and Arthur, his boyfriend, helps him get out of it, but yet nobody knows that they're a couple. Like, it's all this stuff going on that, because of the obtuseness of the characters, it makes for some comedic moments and some more serious moments of disappointment and missed opportunities for connection and friendship and affection. And I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end, but it's not particularly dramatic. I think there's this one moment of homophobic violence. At the end, when the young couple have left, Medora and Randolph, and I don't think Medora, she certainly is not talking to Randolph as if she understands that Randolph himself is homosexual. And Randolph, we're never really clear whether he knows that he's homosexual, but they have this conversation at the end where they both get real with each other about other stuff going on, and that's the intergenerational divide. They are both, she's in her mid-40s, he's maybe 50, and they are just so fixated on the young university students, the young university men, and always have been, and they're not living their own lives, and they're kind of living a vicarious thing that's partly sexual for both of them, I suppose, and there's a frank conversation about that I thought was really quite stunning. So if any of this sounds good, and especially if you're interested in historical gay literature, a novel of this subtlety to be published in 1919 and then to just fall flat because nobody could really understand what was going on. I think it's an important novel historically, but it's also a novel that I really enjoyed reading. So I recommend it to you. Thanks for watching.